Mercury, about 3.8 billion years ago. A huge asteroid is about to collide with the planet. Boom! Fragments are flying in different directions, along with the blast wave. When the dust settles, we see a crater almost the size of Lake Ontario. The most interesting thing here is the shape of the crater. It looks like a spider. A round body in the center, and a bunch of legs that spread out from the crater in different directions. But the strangest thing is that the spider's legs don't quite line up with the center. Scientists can only guess how such a landscape was formed. Some think that the picture of the spider appeared there much earlier, and the meteorite falling almost into its center was just a coincidence. But we still don't have a clear explanation of how such scars could have appeared on the surface of Mercury. Another mystery about Mercury is how it was born. One theory claims that the planet used to be Venus's moon, but over time, it succumbed to the sun's gravity. The star literally ripped Mercury away, and the little planet began orbiting it. What might prove this theory is the rotation periods of Mercury and Venus. Mercury is gradually losing its rotational speed. One day on this planet now equals 58 Earth days and continues to increase. At the same time, after losing its heavy load, Venus has started rotating a little faster. Another theory says that Mercury collided with Venus shortly after the appearance of the solar system. At that time, Proto-Mercury was slightly larger than the planet we're familiar with these days. But then, Mercury lost part of its crust after colliding with Venus. And a little later, Venus collected this debris. But scientists still can't come up with a definitive answer as to how Mercury was formed. Uranus, a gas giant, 18 Earth-Sun distances from our home. This planet seems calm compared to other giants, like Jupiter with its Earth-sized storms. And still, Uranus has something unusual to boast about. This dark spot, for example, was detected by the Hubble telescope in 2006. At that time, it was almost twice the size of Alaska. A few years later, bright spots appeared there. It turned out that they were methane clouds that moved across the surface of the planet at a speed of 300 miles per hour. But we don't know what exactly causes such storms on Uranus. Maybe we can solve this secret by looking at another mystery of Uranus. This planet rotates while lying on its side. If you look at the axis of our planet, you'll see that it's vertical and only slightly tilted. It's the same for most of the planets in our solar system. But not Uranus. Its axis is almost horizontal and pointed toward the sun. One of the poles of Uranus is fully illuminated at almost all times. The polar day on the planet lasts for 42 Earth years. When the tilt of Uranus's axis changes, the polar day starts on the other side of the planet. The other pole plunges into darkness for 42 years. This change of seasons can cause severe storms on the planet's surface. But why exactly Uranus lies on its side is unknown. Perhaps billions of years ago, the gas giant collided with several asteroids that were about to become a young planet. Such a protoplanet, similar in size and weight to Earth, could have tilted Uranus after crashing into it. But it's still just a hypothesis. Now let's go to Jupiter's moon, Europa. The big mystery here is whether there is life on this moon. Scientists don't deny such a possibility. All you see on the moon's surface is ice. The stripes you may spot are actually long, wide cracks. For a long time, scientists thought this moon was nothing more than a block of ice. But now, they think there might be liquid water inside. The core of Europa is heated by the tidal forces of Jupiter. This warm core melts the ice around it, so there really could be a huge ocean under the ice crust. Since water is the basis of life, different microorganisms could exist there. But we would only find out if we sent a probe there. We would have to drill through 24 miles of solid ice and start searching in an ocean twice the size of all water reservoirs on Earth. Look at Saturn's moon, Titan. It's the second largest moon in the solar system. It's 50% bigger than Earth's natural satellite. It's the only place in our solar system, other than Earth, where liquid water has been proven to exist. But the most interesting thing about Titan is its atmosphere. It's 250 miles thick. This distance is almost 40 times greater than the average cruising altitude of commercial planes on Earth. And it's 95% nitrogen. For comparison, Earth's atmosphere is 79% nitrogen, which means they're quite similar. The mystery is that no one knows how this atmosphere appeared there. One theory suggests that many years ago, meteorites hit Titan's surface almost non-stop. Massive rocks collided with the crust, raising the pressure and temperatures on the moon. Under such conditions, the ammonia in the air decomposed into nitrogen and hydrogen. The heavy nitrogen fell on Titan's surface, while the light hydrogen rose and flowed out into space. But some scientists dispute this theory. Another mystery of the solar system is the hypothetical star Nemesis, and whether it really exists. If you look at all the stars of our galaxy, most of them are paired, which means that two stars orbit around each other. Statistically, the Sun must also have a companion. So, some scientists have made an assumption that the largest mass extinctions on Earth were related to some mysterious object in space. They hypothesized that there was a red dwarf somewhere within 1.5 light-years away from the center of the solar system, and every approach of this dwarf star to the asteroid cloud disturbed these space travelers. Every time it happened, several asteroids began their journey toward Earth and caused a mass extinction. But this star hasn't yet been discovered, and many scientists question this hypothesis. Now let's look at the very edge of the solar system. A photon of light has to travel 1 year to get here. Scientists believe the Oort cloud exists in that area. It's a hypothetical region where tons of asteroids and blocks of ice gather into clouds. It's the furthest place where the sun's gravity still works. Presumably, this spherical cloud wraps around the solar system. This is the region where long-period comets are thought to originate. They fly all the way through the solar system and then return to the Oort cloud. This journey can take thousands of years. Even more exciting, there could be a gas giant called Tyche in that region. Some scientists say it might be 4 times the size of Jupiter. So far, no research has confirmed its existence. Although the Oort cloud is still considered hypothetical, some scientists believe that comets from that area are responsible for the major mass extinctions on Earth. Now let's go beyond the borders of the solar system. There, 1,500 light-years away from Earth, there's the closest to our home planet black hole. Black holes are the most mysterious objects in the universe. They're so heavy that they attract not only matter, but also light. Even more, they slow down time. Once something gets trapped in a black hole's gravity, it never escapes. Light and matter gradually settle near the event horizon and soon disappear into infinite darkness. Time flows differently here. 1 minute near a black hole can be equal to weeks on Earth. The biggest mystery is what exactly is inside a black hole. Some speculate that there's nothing but crushing pressure that destroys anything that gets there. Others say it might be a portal to another dimension or a wormhole to another place in the universe. If it was true, white holes would exist as well, as exits from black hole portals and wormholes. But no white hole has been found so far. Now, how about going to the hypothetical border of the entire universe? It's called the Eridanus supervoid. If you look at the map of the universe, you'll see an empty cold spot about 1 billion light-years wide. The entire Milky Way galaxy is only 100,000 light-years across. The main mystery is how the spot appeared. One theory says this void is the scar left by the collision of 2 parallel universes. Imagine that universes are giant bubbles, and one day, 2 of these bubbles collided. That's when the parallel universe ripped several galaxies out of our bubble. So far, this is the only explanation for how such a huge cold void could appear in our universe.
Now, Mercury is the planet that's usually closest to Earth. Does that surprise you? Did me. Venus certainly gets closer to us than Mercury. It can be as close as 25 million miles. After all, Venus is the second planet from the Sun, and Earth is the third. Even Mars gets closer to Earth than Mercury. The red planet can come as close to our home as 35 million miles, as it will in the year 2287. I won't be around for that. The average distance from Earth to Mercury is 48 million miles, but Mercury is still usually the closest planet to Earth. That's because Venus is usually somewhere on the other side of the Sun for 112 days, and Mars is usually far away in its highly elliptical, almost 2-year-long orbit. That leaves Mercury zipping between the Earth and the Sun every 44 days, and thus usually closer to Earth than either Venus or Mars. Hey, good trivia question to pull on your friends, isn't it? 22 spacecraft have successfully flown to Venus, and over 30 spacecraft have flown to Mars, but only 2 have ever gone to Mercury. So, what's so hard about going there? Well, it has to do with the Sun. Mercury is not only the planet that is usually closest to Earth, it is also the planet that is always closest to the Sun, 28.6 million miles close, to be precise. Being that close to the Sun creates navigational challenges, to put it mildly. Any spacecraft going to Mercury gets accelerated by the tremendous gravitational pull of the Sun. The spacecraft will be moving too fast to go into orbit around Mercury. That's why the first spacecraft that went to Mercury, the USA's Mariner 10, merely flew by Mercury 3 times, but made no attempt to achieve orbit around Mercury. The only other ship to go to Mercury, the USA's Messenger spacecraft, took 6.5 years to get there. Now that's a trip. Messenger did achieve orbit for a period of 4 years before finally running out of fuel and crashing onto the surface of Mercury on April 20, 2015. Many other spacecraft have flown to Jupiter in about the same time or less than it took Messenger to go to Mercury. The hang-up is the deceleration of the spacecraft. Quite simply, it takes too much onboard fuel supply to fire the engines in the reverse direction and brake the speed of the ship against the Sun's great gravity. Slowing down sufficiently to get into orbit around Mercury is a no-go using rocket power. Some other way had to be found to slow Messenger down, a way that didn't use much or any fuel. Messenger was a hefty 2,400 pounds or so, loaded with 9 pieces of state-of-the-art scientific equipment. Now, 55% of the total weight, or about 1,300 pounds, was fuel. But this fuel would not be used to slow the spacecraft down. The fuel would be used for 5 engine burns associated with gravity assists and also for orbital adjustments once Messenger got to Mercury. Now, gravity assists uses the gravity of a planet and the planet's orbital velocity to either speed up or slow down a spacecraft. If the ship approaches a planet at a forward-moving angle, that is, an angle in the direction the planet is revolving around the Sun, then both the planet's gravity and the orbital velocity of the planet give the spacecraft a slingshot boost, greatly increasing the speed of the craft and sending it off in a different direction. This boost in speed can be added to by the spacecraft firing its rocket engines at just the right time. Both of America's Voyager probes use Jupiter's massive gravity to slingshot them to the outer gas giant planets and eventually out of the solar system. Gravity assist can also be used to slow down a spacecraft, as in the case of Messenger. By entering a planet's orbital path ahead of the planet's gravity pulls back on the spacecraft and slows it down. An engine burn is necessary at this time to escape the orbital path of the planet. Messenger performed 1 gravity assist flyby of Earth, 2 gravity assist flybys of Venus, and 3 gravity flybys of Mercury. Only then had Messenger been slowed enough to enter into orbit around Mercury. The probe traveled an astounding 5 billion miles to get to Mercury from Earth. That's farther than Pluto is away from Earth at its most distant. The name Messenger is an acronym, almost as clever as its intricate flight path to Mercury. Because Mercury is the fastest moving planet, the ancient Greeks appointed Mercury as the messenger of Olympus. News traveled fast even back then. Messenger really stands for Mercury Surface, Space Environment, Geochemistry, and Ranging. What do you think? Did they have a contest to come up with that? Now, the good news is, there's another mission to Mercury underway right now. It is a combined ESA-JAXA space mission that is bringing 2 orbiting satellites to Mercury. The mission doesn't use an acronym for its spacecraft, it has a real name, BepiColombo. No, it's not a cartoon character. Dr. Giuseppe Colombo, after whom the spacecraft is named, was an Italian mathematician and professor of applied mechanics. He worked with NASA on the Mariner 10 mission to Mercury. Bepi is Giuseppe's childhood nickname, which everyone knew and loved him by. NASA had been content with one flyby of Mercury, the first ever, but Professor Bepi calculated that with a slight adjustment of the flight path to enable a gravity assist at Venus, Mariner 10 could fly by Mercury again and again on different orbits around the Sun. Thanks to Bepi, NASA got 3 flybys of Mercury for the price of one. BepiColombo, the spacecraft, is scheduled to perform 9 gravity assist flybys, 1 at Earth, 2 at Venus, and 6 at Mercury itself. Each planetary deceleration slows BepiColombo relative to the speed Mercury is moving around the Sun. This will allow for orbital insertion. Otherwise, BepiColombo would head off into the Sun. Now, once in orbit around Mercury, BepiColombo's Mercury Transfer Module, or MTM for short, will release 2 satellites, one European, the MPO, Mercury Planetary Orbiter, and one Japanese, the MEO, Mercury Magnetospheric Orbiter. Both are expected to orbit Mercury for 1 year. Altogether, the MCS, Mercury Composite Spacecraft, consists of the MPO, the MEO, the MTM, and MOSIF, which protects the spacecraft from the Sun and houses the electronics for MEO. This alphabet soup of mission components highlights the other reason it is difficult to get to Mercury. After 6 gravity assist slowdowns, 6 engine burns, 18 orbits around the Sun, 6.5 years of travel time, and 9 billion miles of distance, you have to bring a tailored complex of equipment. It's like that mountain picnic you'd like to go on. You can't just drive there. You have to hike a long way up a tricky mountain trail and bring along insect repellent, sunscreen, and your hat. Oh, and lunch and beverages. It's not easy. BepiColombo has packed it all, including lunch. Nah, not really. The design is incredibly complex. Nothing can face the Sun, not even the solar panels. The solar panels must be kept turned almost to a right angle to the Sun, or the heat and particle flux will corrode the solar cells, and without electricity, you have nothing. Therefore, at right angles to the Sun, the solar panels must be extra long, as if there were only a little bit of sunshine. Bepi's solar panels are 50 feet long. The sun shield must remain gyroscopically aligned towards the Sun so that all instruments are always in the shade but still have a line of sight to what each is meant to monitor. And there are a lot of instruments, 5 in the JAXA orbiter and 11 in the ESA orbiter. It's one amazing picnic. Anyway, the science objectives are meant to add to what we have learned from the previous 2 missions to Mercury. The data collected by BepiColombo will enable scientists to study the planet's interior and composition, along with Mercury's geology and surface morphology, Mercury's magnetic fields formation and evolutionary history, the planet's solar-wind interactions, and overall environment. As a metal-rich planet, Mercury may hold a vast wealth of minerals that MESSENGER failed to detect. BepiColombo launched in October 2018 and still has a long way to go before it goes into orbit around Mercury. However, Bepi has already flown past Mercury and returned new photographs. The European Space Agency is excited about its first hot mission. All of the ESA's previous missions have been cold missions to objects further out into space, such as Mars, the asteroid belt, Comet Rendezvous, and elsewhere far out in the solar system. Well, all I can say is, best wishes to BepiColombo. Let's hope all goes well on its 800 degrees Fahrenheit mission to Mercury. Let's hope that Mercury's long tail of exosphere gases, sodium, magnesium, and potassium, blown off the planet's surface by the solar wind, don't fog up the lenses or coat the solar panels. Have a nice time! Ciao, baby! Hey, ready to test your knowledge? Of course you are. You'll get 1 point for each correct answer. So, without further ado, the sun is yellow. Do you think this is a myth? Ask someone to draw a picture of the sun, and chances are you'll get a yellow or orange circle in the sky. Surprise! The sun is not really yellow. If you see it somewhere outside the Earth's atmosphere, it'll look white. How come? According to NASA, the sun's temperature is the reason why it's white. The sun consists of all colors mixed together, so it appears to our eyes as white. Then why do you think we see it as yellow or orange from Earth? Colored wavelengths, which are yellow and orange, are longer, and they are the only ones that make it to our eyes. The other short wavelength colors sprawl in the atmosphere, and the sky looks blue to us during the day for the same reason. Meteorites are hot as fire when they land on Earth. What do you think, myth or fact? When people see a fireball around a meteorite, they think it's super hot. Well, this is a myth. Meteorites don't immediately land on Earth. Most of them have been in space for billions of years. Space has a cold environment, just a few degrees above absolute zero cold, you know. But don't meteorites fall into the Earth in flames? How come? The fireball is actually the air in front of the meteorite. It is compressed by the super high speed of the meteorite. The outside catches fire, but that layer is burned off on impact as a result of landing on Earth. As you would probably guess, when they land, the meteorites are lukewarm at most, but not as hot as lava. One side of the moon is permanently in the dark. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? This is a myth. Oh, come on. First the sun and now the moon. Am I living a lie? So, people look at the sky and see only the bright side of the moon. The reality is the Earth shines equally on all sides of the moon as it rotates and orbits the Earth. Half of the moon is in shadow, and half gets sunshine similar to Earth. That's not true. Similar to Earth, it doesn't have a permanent dark side. The logic is simple. The moon orbits Earth, but it also rotates on its own axis. When you think about it, we're always looking at the same side of the moon. Black holes take in everything that comes their way. What is it, myth or fact? Black holes don't have infinite mass and gravitational force, but still, no one really knows for sure what happens to the things pulled into them. Experts do know black holes do not have supergravity, though. Let's imagine this. If there was a black hole as big as the sun, it wouldn't immediately eat the whole planet. Imagine black holes as vacuum cleaners. It does draw in a cloud of dust near its range, but other specks of dust remain where they are. So even if there was a black hole replacing the sun, all the planets would continue to orbit similarly. They wouldn't go into the black hole. If a star or something else got into the range of the black hole, only then would its gravity affect the star. When you call someone, the signal bounces off a satellite. Is this a myth or a fact? It's a myth. Or rather, an urban legend or misconception, you name it. I mean, there are some satellite phones, but we, regular people, don't use those every day. Although your mobile phone works in a much different way. When you call someone, the nearest tower connects you to the other person online. This is why there are tower connections, huge networks of tower-to-tower connections, and hidden cables. The moon has no gravity. Any guesses? Myth or fact? This is an urban legend. Ask any astronaut you know. If you don't know any, just trust me. There is footage proving that the moon has gravity. When I say the moon has gravity, don't think it's similar to the gravity on Earth that makes the apple fall. The moon's gravity is only about 1/6 of Earth's. How does it feel to walk on the surface of the moon? The second man on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, mentioned it's like moving in slow motion and, quote, perhaps not too far from a trampoline, but without the springiness and instability, end quote. The sunset on Mars appears blue. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? This is a fact. Magnificent sunsets. The sky is filled with different shades of yellow. Now imagine this in blue. According to NASA, sunsets on Mars would look bluish, watching them with bare eyes. It's because of dust. Dust particles closer to the sun appear in blue tones. There is something called moonquakes. Does it sound like a myth or a fact? It's a fact. Quakes happen on the moon too, and they're called moonquakes. They have different features, not really similar to the quakes on Earth though. A planet can be hot enough to vaporize rocks. Any guesses? Is this a myth or a fact? This is a fact. The temperature in this universe is indeed very high. There's a planet, the temperature of which is enough to melt and even vaporize rocks. It's 2 times bigger than the Earth. This super-Earth is similar to our planet, but it is way too hot. Experts believe that it possibly has oceans of lava and clouds that rain molten rock. 1 million Earths can fit inside the Sun. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? This is a fact. Although the Sun is one of more than 100 billion stars in the Milky Way, which is at the heart of our solar system, it can fit 1 million Earths. Yeah, it looks small when we see it from here, but it's only because it's so far away from Earth. All comets have tails, myth or fact? It's true. Some comets simply don't show their tails. They look like someone threw a snowball into space. Space is completely silent. What do you say? Shh, I knew it was too easy. This is a fact. Space doesn't have an atmosphere, so there's no way to hear any sound there. Mercury is the hottest planet. Myth or fact? Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun, so this should be a fact, huh? No, not really. Venus is the hottest planet in our solar system and the second planet from the Sun. But the distance from the Sun isn't what defines the temperature. The heat depends on the atmosphere. So Venus's atmosphere consists mostly of carbon dioxide and some nitrogen. This combination makes the atmosphere very thick. When I say thick, I mean it. Throughout the year, the surface of Venus maintains a temperature of around 860 degrees Fahrenheit. Mercury's surface resembles the temperature of a desert, but is much higher in terms of temperature variations. Venus spins clockwise. What do you say? This is a fact. Venus spins in the opposite direction compared to many other planets. The Sun rises in the west, and its rotation is very slow. Venus needs 225 Earth days to complete its spinning around the Sun. The planet's distance from the Sun affects the duration of one rotation. It's too close to the Sun, and the Sun has a strong, noticeable pull on the planets. Footprints on the Moon can stay there for millions of years. Do you think this is a fact or a myth? Fact checked. The Moon has no atmosphere, so there's no wind blowing, and without the wind, there's no way to erase the footprints without any intervention. So, how many points did you get? Let me know in the comments.